Alright, so I want to run you guys through electricity stuff. My base isn't set up quite optimally for electricity, but it still works for me pretty well. There are a couple different YouTube videos already out about this. Some of them have a couple different things wrong. Basically, you want as little stuff on grid as possible, so that you really don't have to be wasting any electricity, because electricity is one of the few things that you actually have to buy with real money or get to level 20 and buy with diamonds through the VIP store. So you don't really have a huge amount of options with it. So it is worth maintaining that electricity as high as possible. Also, if that electricity does go down, the electrical supply directly impacts every other supply option that you have on your base. So that's why inactive accounts, when they're starting to go under, those inactive guys, they stop producing because their electricity starts dropping, and all of these start producing like, say, 2%. Well, 2% of 42k of iron is not really that much. So there are a couple buildings here that you don't really need on. Some of those you definitely don't need your bunks on. They take up electricity and they just kind of hang out. You don't need your vehicle, whatever these are, for when you're actually building your trucks. When you're actually building your construction vehicles. You don't need any old buildings that don't have anything to do with your particular class. You don't need those on, and you actually don't need your hospitals on, except for one. So I have one hospital on. This is usually my lowest level one, so this one I just started building, and I just slowly level that up. Once that reaches level 19, I'll pop it back in here, grab one of these level 16s and pull it out, just to keep my hospitals producing until I get them all to level 19. Then I'll build them all up to 20. But I keep one of those out because otherwise you can't heal, and I keep it really close to the base. That way I can just click right here. So there are a couple things. I don't have this optimized just because well, I could probably move those across one space, but banks you don't actually need on. They don't actually have to sit on the road. You can actually take those off. I did have an issue yesterday with one of my farms that the banks were off, and all of a sudden it stopped producing. So that one's a little hit or miss. We've only had like 2 instances of that happen with 2 different players. Just randomly, you come back after the night and it only has like 120k of money. But they can, and I've had them offline for a month on one of my accounts. But the houses do have to stay on the grid. That's because if you take these off, the population will drop, which will decrease all of your stats for everything. Your fighter war rooms, or your war rooms, these, I've heard that these don't actually have to be online, but I take a look. I'm at 188k right now. If I go and drop those off, it doesn't actually change it that much. 187k for those 3 buildings. So I would prefer just keep those online. And then if you notice, I have all of my military stuff clustered over here. This is a huge use of energy. So if I actually move those all back online, that puts me up to 257k, which is a lot. So I keep those all offline the whole time. You can have these building, you can have these producing troops, and you just connect that every single time. So you're not wasting that extra like 80k worth, right? Outside of that, I keep all of my chip plants online so I can be using those constantly. Same as my energy refining plants online so I can be using them constantly. These 3 buildings, you don't actually need online. You can access them through other ways. But I like to use the chip, the token. I use this every single day because I buy these guys so I can get the S1 heroes. So for me, it's worth just having that online so that I can never forget to get those tokens. And then I leave the military academy on there so I can exchange some metals every so often. But these don't take up a huge amount of electricity. These guys take up a little bit. Obviously, you want your clones on. Right now, I lost like 730k over the weekend. Nobody's helping me out because everyone else got beat up too, but that's fine. I actually usually leave these offline, and I leave these offline for the next 3 days. So that drops me down just a little bit. These guys don't actually have to be online. I've just put them in a really funky place. I could probably move them back 1 square. But your anti-missile defense is actually going to function when it's offline, so that's kind of cool. And you don't really need to worry about that unless you're getting hit by a lot of missiles all at once. Then you might want to consider putting this online so that you can, like, this guy hit me like 6 times and it took 5 anti-missiles at a time. He knocked me down to like 7 anti-missiles. So I would keep that online just so you can, defend those, and just keep on chucking new ones back in there and producing them. I don't ever run missiles. They're kind of useless. So yeah. Now the big one is going to be your ration center. This one, if you put it online, you're gonna be sitting at 209. If you go and take it off, you drop down like 22k. You can actually, if you're wanting full production of money, which I really don't care about, you can actually set this, like I usually move the road across to it, quickly fill it up, transport to it, and then move this guy off. That's the way that I do it to make sure that basically it's just never wrecking my production. I technically don't need some of these other buildings on here. I know one of my guys has gone through and dropped off his warehouse 1s, because this only adds an extra million. An extra 10 million? I don't know. But basically, in comparison to these other ones, right? This one gives you an extra 20 million. So if I just upgrade this one time, I could drop this one off. It's actually going to save me like 5 to 10k for each of these level 1 storage warehouses. But so basically for me, it's just more about saving fuel. I don't really want these guys going all the time, but it is kind of beneficial for me to boost this up, especially since I'm trying to get these last couple energy refining plants up, and they cost 3 million a piece, even just at a level 11. So quick tutorial on it, but basically just segregate or separate stuff out so that all your military stuff is here. Anytime you need something military, you go and move it on. Your radar will work, your headquarters will work, your tower will work, even if offline. But some of these other buildings just take up a huge amount of power. All of these ones, just keep them offline all the time. Only time I ever do anything is when I'm trying to grab one to move it around. And then your banks can be offline, but there's something a little funky going on with that recently. Your institute technically can be offline. I can move this all the way over here. It's going to keep on going, and I can always access it right through here. So it doesn't really matter where it's at. That drops me a little bit, 10k or something like that, especially when it's already going. I just hate stuff sitting out in the middle like that. Kind of gets on my nerves a little. So outside of that, you kind of want military intel online. I leave my garrison online all the time just because I like to be able to tweak that stuff. I know a couple of my guys move this off for like most of the time, and again, that's going to drop you by another 20k. So throughout the week, that might be a more beneficial thing to do, is just move the garrison offline if you already have your stationed troops correctly allocated, just so if like a zombie event happens or anything like that you forget about, that you can protect yourself. But yeah, outside of that, I don't really build this school of architecture. I'm not trying to look for a fancy looking base that has waterfalls and crap like that that use electricity, so I don't even bother building that building. Still have to build another power plant, but that's whatever too. And yeah, that's basically how you keep electricity low. You can also do this with farms too. I can, oh yeah, and I just keep this guy up as high as possible, this guy up as high as possible. I haven't used those recently just because they're costing they end up costing a lot of money. But I'm only using around 600k or so of fuel a day for this energy production, and to me that's fine. That's for 170k an hour, so let's just say a couple mil a day. Yeah, as long as these guys are all offline, because these guys will take up a little bit of power to move those on. That jumps me up to 190, so keep those off. Obviously this farm's not really going to be producing, but I don't care because I'm always in the negative, so it doesn't really matter if that farm's producing. I guess technically at that point I could take all of my farms off, but that's just a lot of wiring around all of this. I don't think the garrison hall has to be attached, but I like to keep the military stuff attached just in case. Yeah, so that's a quick one on the energy stuff. Basically, goal is to keep production absolute max so that none of your other stats go through and drop, and the easiest way really is just to get rid of all of the military stuff. Update it as you need to, but just keep it off-road, and keep all of this stuff off-road. So yeah, any questions, post them in the comments.